In our first story, Google had a massive earnings beat for Q2 2021 yesterday, and YouTube grew revenue almost 100% year over year. 80% year over year growth is just extraordinary for a large business. Let's break down how YouTube compares to Netflix, two seemingly very different businesses, but who line up kind of interestingly. So just to give you some background, you know that Alphabet is the parent company of Google. They named it Alphabet so that every letter of the alphabet could be a different unit. Cynically, what most people think is they created Alphabet so that there would be no way for Larry and Sergey to get dragged to Washington, D.C. or to the EU and face all kinds of different regulatory organizations. They wanted it to be a conglomerate, a holding company, and put somebody in charge of it. And so now poor Sundar has to get dragged in front of Congress. That's a cynical take that everybody kind of knows is the truth, is that the founders wanted to be lower profile, and mission accomplished. You see Zuck getting dragged all over the world, and you see Bezos is no longer in the top spot. This is now the new technique for founders to put somebody else in the driver's seat, and maybe they get to not take as many arrows or be annoyed by being dragged around the world like Zuckerberg has been to face the music. So total Q2 revenue, $61.8 billion, up 62% year over year. Now, just let that sink in. You know, we've talked a lot about how in startups, we're looking for startups that grow 20% a month and that are growing 3x year over year. That's kind of when these things are starting out, what you're looking for. When you hit scale and you've got tens of billions of dollars in revenue, understand that 62% growth on tens of billions of dollars is a ton of revenue. So much so, the first half revenue is $117 billion. And if you just double that, you know, you're getting to over $230 billion. And obviously, it's going to keep growing. So this is a footprint of revenue unlike anything we've seen, you know, prior to, with the exception of Apple and Microsoft and Amazon. The net income was $18.5 billion. That's the profit. That's what they put in their bank account. And that's up 2.6x year over year. In other words, they were massively profitable. So at this pace, they will put $73 billion into their bank account this year. That is a lot of cash. With that money, they could buy Coinbase just with 1 year's profits. They could buy Airbnb, Uber, DoorDash, any number of assets, right? But in this country now, we have been putting the kibosh on M&A and looking at these companies that are getting so big with a little bit of a tighter amount of scrutiny. And this is in the face of China ankling their own companies, reversing them going public, pulling their apps out of the App Store, forcing high-profile founders not to maybe give up their seat voluntarily, but maybe putting a gun to their head, and who knows, quite literally perhaps, to get them to neuter their own companies. It's crazy when you think about it. So YouTube is a major driver here, but Google's search business and their third-party ad network is what Google is. Google is an ad business at its core. That's how they make their money. And their ad revenue was 50 of that $61 billion. Now, remember, Q2 of 2020 was really hard hit by COVID, and advertising dollars did dry up for a little bit. People paused their ad buys. Everybody, if you remember, just a year ago, in a couple of months, people were in a full-scale panic. What would happen to the economy? A lot got frozen during that time. So the year-over-year growth could be a little inflated here. But retail was by far the largest contributor to the company's ad growth, according to their chief business officer, Philip Schindler, on Tuesday's earnings call. Google's cloud is becoming, almost 10% of their revenue, $4.6 billion. That's really interesting. So Google's cloud computing platform, which goes up against Amazon Web Services, and they've also cut their losses for Google Cloud by $840 million year over year. They lost $1.4 billion in Q2 of last year. And this quarter, they only lost $591 million. When you say losses, another way to frame that in your mind is investment. So they've been investing, trying to catch up to Amazon Web Services and compete in cloud computing, also with Microsoft's Azure. Those are the top three players. And so you see them investing in that business, and it's apparently paying off. Despite all this, the most impressive business in Q2 was YouTube. Their ad revenue was $7 billion, up 83% year over year. And this doesn't include subscription revenue, which Alphabet doesn't disclosed for YouTube for some reason, but they are disclosing YouTube's revenue separately, which they didn't do for a long time. And when you look at it, it's pretty close to the 7 billion is pretty close to Netflix's Q2 revenue, which was 7.3 billion. I think it's great for us to look at these two businesses. Netflix has 10 times less users than YouTube. They only have 210 million subscribers compared to YouTube's 2 billion plus users who use the service every month. So one is 10% of the size of the other. They both have the same revenue, and the revenue comes from different places. So if you look at where the content comes from, what is the product? Well, Netflix spends billions on premium content every year. We know that. And they have to develop their own IP now because other IP holders are pulling their content off the platform. Remember, Netflix had all those Marvel deals for Daredevil and Punisher and all that kind of stuff. That all got pulled, right? And all those series are now on Disney Plus. Netflix spent close to $12 billion on content in 2020, and they're going to spend $17 billion in 2021, according to Variety. YouTube has billions of users, obviously, and it's generally user-generated content or professional-generated content, but it's an open platform. YouTube is not a gatekeeper. Anybody can upload anything they want to YouTube, and they do, right? Podcasts, YouTube creators, how-to articles. But YouTube paid $30 billion to creators from 2018 through 2020, and that was from the 2021 yearly priority letter from Susan Wojcicki, who I'd love to have on the program, by the way. We should invite Susan to come on the program again. So if you look at the content business, one person has to spend a god-awful amount of money. The other one just gives a percentage. It's kind of a jump ball there. It's two different things. I wouldn't give the edge to either company. You know, one of them owns 100% of the IP. In most cases, that's Netflix. And in YouTube's case, they don't own this IP. Anybody can take their content off or stop publishing it there, like we saw Joe Rogan do. So you might even give the edge to Netflix if they happen to figure out how to create a franchise like Star Wars or Marvel in the future, which they might. They might be able to do that. Orange is the New Black is probably not it, but there might be others. So if you look at the strength of the revenue and the quality of that revenue, well, Netflix has subscription revenue, and that is usually more predictable than ad-based revenue. However, Netflix did have a number of users unsubscribe or not renew in the last quarter. They lost about 400,000 folks. So YouTube's revenue could be fickle because advertising, does go up and down based on the economy. However, when you hit scale, you have to ask yourself, who's the competitor here, right? Who's the competitor to YouTube, a massively global business that has never existed before? And I would actually, even though subscription revenue is delightful and predictable, I'd actually give the edge to YouTube here because I don't think they have a contemporary. There is no business out there that can reach as many people as quickly with video than YouTube. So if you're a TV advertiser and you want to reach 100 million people, 500 million people, is there a network that can do that today? Can NBC do that? No. Can Disney do that? No. There is not a network who can do that except for YouTube. In today's startup landscape, committing to security and compliance is vital for growth, and proof of your company's security posture has never been more important. As you scale, you might start to receive more SOC 2 requests from customers, and that's where Drata comes in. Drata is an advanced automation platform used by some of the world's leading chief information security officers, or CISOs. Drata will help you successfully meet requirements, support enterprise deal flow, and continually track compliance. Drata also helps customers easily prepare for and clear SOC 2 and other audits, so you can go from zero to audit ready in a matter of weeks. Need more? Take it from Philip Martin, Chief Security Officer at Coinbase, and here's his quote. "It became clear to me right away that Drata is an engineering powerhouse. The solution they've developed is well ahead of other market players. Their approach to deep native integrations provides users with the most advanced automation available." So check out Drata's 5-star reviews on G2 and see why companies like ClearClose, SmartRecruiter, and the Goodface Project work with Drata for their compliance needs. Twist listeners can get 15% off and waived implementation fees at drata.com/twist, DRATA.com/twist.